Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Today on the Lawyer You Know, we're going to unpack the facts of the new bill in Florida called the Fairness in Women's Sports Act that Governor Ron DeSantis has signed into law. And this is a thing now that Florida schools are going to have to deal with. Whenever we talk about these bills or laws that are coming into play, we like to look at the actual language in the bill, in the law, so we know exactly what it says, and we're not just reading some news media article that says, oh, this is what the bill says, or this is what they're trying to do with this bill, or, Governor DeSantis is always trying to do this, or Florida is so stupid, whatever it may be. The point is, on this show, we like to look at the actual language. We like to look at the facts, and we like to just explain what's going on and leave you, as all the potential jurors, the citizens of Florida, the citizens of any state that you're in, to let us know what you think. What do you think this bill says? What do you think it means? What's it going to do? So this is actually the latest version of the bill I could find. So if there were any changes made before it was signed in, they were probably very minor. So let's jump into what was actually said in the bill. First thing we're going to notice when we put this bill up on the screen is the title. The title is Fairness in Women's Sports Act. So this entire scenario is becoming so over-politicized, right? And it starts with that title. There are 30 plus states that have a bill similar to this dealing with transgender athletes and dealing with sports while they're in school, high school, college, whatever it may be. But both sides of the aisle in politics are taking this opportunity, as they do with every opportunity, to turn this into a political debate. What the far lefts are calling this bill is the anti-transgender bill, the transphobic bill, a discriminatory bill. How hateful is this bill? Everybody on the right is saying, no, we're doing this for women's rights. We're celebrating women. We fought so hard for these women to have these rights, and now the left is trying to take them away. So we're fighting for women's rights, which you can tell, a Republican proposed bill. It's called the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, because that's what they want to focus on. You're going to hear both of these political groups scream from the rooftops, this is what this bill is about. But let's read for ourselves what the bill actually says. So the first section is just the short title. The second section is the legislative intent and findings. What this section does is tell us what this bill is supposed to do. What was the purpose of this bill? What was the legislative intent? The legislatures intended to do something. That's why they created this bill. Let's read exactly what their intent is. A, it is the intent of the legislature to maintain opportunities for female athletes to demonstrate their strength, skills, and athletic abilities, and to provide them with opportunities to obtain recognition and accolades, college scholarships, and the numerous other long-term benefits that result from participating and competing in athletic endeavors. Seems good, right? That's the legislative intent. They want women to have the opportunity to get college scholarships, to break records, to get gold medals, to get trophies, to get the recognition, the accolades. That seems good, right? I think all of us would agree with part A. Okay, now B. The legislature finds that maintaining the fairness for women athletic opportunities is an important state interest. The legislature finds that requiring the designation of separate sex-specific athletic teams or sports is necessary to maintain fairness for women's athletic opportunities. Now is where it gets a little muddier, where they start talking about, gender-specific, sex-specific athletic teams and sports. So now we're kind of getting into that transgender versus male versus female type of discussion as to what we're going to do with this. But what I find interesting in this paragraph is they say that they find it is an important state interest. That's important because when legislatures write these bills, write these laws, there has to be a reason for them. They have to be necessary, and really they're only necessary if it is an important state interest. If it's a private interest, if it just deals with me, if it just deals with my family, if it just deals with my group or my business, that's not necessarily a state interest, right? But they're saying that women's athletics in sports, the teams dealing with the schools, high school, college, whatever it may be, this is an important state interest. This is necessary for us to make this bill and this law. So that's something that stuck out to me. All right, Section 3. So now that's it for the legislative intent and findings, right? So Section 3, designation of athletic teams or sports. Now is when we get into it. Section A, interscholastic, intercollegiate, intramural, or club athletic teams or sports that are sponsored by a public secondary school or public post-secondary institution must be expressly designated as one of the following based on the biological sex at birth of team members. So we're about to jump into this, but one important thing to point out in this paragraph is this is just public sponsored or public institutions, right? This is if you're getting government funding. If your sports team gets government funding, you have to follow these rules. So private schools, private sports teams, there are all sorts of academies and institutions created privately just to push sports, right? IMG Academy pops into my head. They wouldn't necessarily have to follow this rule unless they get government funding. I don't know. But private entities that don't get any government funding don't necessarily have to abide by these rules. It's important to point that out when we're dealing with a government agency and a government bill like this is. It just affects public or government-aided entities and institutions, okay? So you must be designated as one of the following based on the biological sex at birth of team members. Number 1, males, men, or boys. Number 2, females, women, or girls. Or number 3, co-ed or mixed, including both males and females. So in looking at these 3 sections, the Human Rights Campaign, who has already said they're going to file a lawsuit against the state of Florida, against Ron DeSantis for this bill, has a big problem with the way that DeSantis, with the way the Republicans, the way Florida right now is defining these gender terms, because they're just saying male, female, or co-ed. They're not even realizing transgenders exist. And that's one of their problems. They say they want to act like we don't exist. They want to act like, we're nothing, we're not a people group, anything like that. Well, I think that definitions are important and words are important, as we say in all of our videos, and this bill actually says the biological sex at birth. So it's not saying transgender people don't exist, it's just saying there is not going to be a category in sports for transgender people. And we'll get to that more at the end, where I'm going to give kind of an idea that I don't know if it makes things better or worse, but let's just keep talking through what the bill actually says. So the next section under 3, the designation of athletic teams or sports, is section B. Athletic teams or sports designated for males, men, or boys may be open to students of the female sex. So a transgender male who was born female is allowed to participate in male sports. So that's the first knock I have on this is anti-trans, this is transphobic, this is acting like they don't exist. They're actually saying that a transgender male who was born as a female can participate in male sports. Okay, that doesn't break the legislative intent, because the legislative intent was not to protect male athletes, was not to protect male sports, was not to make sure men get college scholarships. That was not the intent of this bill. I think that's really important to point out as we think through what this bill actually says and what it does, because it does not prohibit a transgender male who was born as a female to play male sports. Let's get to the next section, which is C. Athletic teams or sports designated for females, women, or girls may not be open to students of the male sex. And because the definition above, which said biological sex at birth, that means the biologically male at birth students who are now transgender females cannot participate in women's sports. Okay? So this is where the big beef arrives. And you let me know, based on the language, based on what you've heard so far in the comments, do you think this is an anti-trans bill? Do you think this is a transphobic bill? Or do you think it's trying to protect women's sports? Because it's allowing transgender males to participate in male sports, but it's not allowing transgender females to participate in female sports. And they've put out findings and reasonings for this, right? 60% of Americans think that transgender females should not participate against other females if they were born a male. They think it's physically not fair, right? There have been, you've seen the videos, you've seen the clips, you've seen the articles of the transgender females in wrestling competitions or races, doing sprints in track, and how unfair it is, how much more physically gifted the transgender females are, right? Those are the findings that they're putting in place to try to support this bill. Okay, but what do you think? What do the people watching these videos think? Do you think that's enough? Because the Human Rights Campaign has already come out, and a lot of the Democratic leaders in Florida have come out and said, and some of you may not know this, since 2013, the FHSAA, which is the Florida High School Sports Association, has allowed transgenders to participate on both sides. Transgender female, transgender male can participate in sports on either side. And we have had no real problems, and there's no real evidence that there's been a problem with female athletes not getting scholarships, female athletes not getting accolades or trophies or gold medals or whatever it may be. We haven't had problems, and we've been doing this since 2013. So that's something that they're really pushing, is that, yeah, we maybe have seen a story here or there, or seen a video or heard something from around the country, but in Florida, it hasn't been a problem. So why are we trying to fix it? So let me know what you think about that. Section D. For purposes of this section, a statement of the student's biological sex on the student's official birth certificate is considered to have correctly stated the student's biological sex at birth if the statement was filed at or near the time of the student's birth. So they're thinking ahead of some litigation and what some people are going to try. They're going to say my birth certificate's actually wrong, I'm actually a boy even though it says I'm a girl, or vice versa. So they're saying whatever it says on your birth certificate, that's what you are. My guess would be, just as a lawyer, that if this was actually wrong, there will be a process and procedure in place to prove you are in fact biologically a female, and you can prove that even if your birth certificate said male because there was a mistake, right? So we're going to have some uproar about, oh, this is totally unfair. We're saying that there are no mistakes made at birth. What about orphans? What about people that are just left at a fire station or whatever? How are we going to know what their biological sex is? There are ways to correct this if you were born male or female. There are probably going to be procedures in place to prove this, right? This is just trying to say people can't come and say I'm one thing and that my birth certificate is wrong and I'm actually another thing. This is, I would say, targeted at transgender males and females to not say their birth certificate is wrong, right? That's probably why this is there. Section number 4, and this is where my ears perk up, it's cause of action and civil remedies. So what does that mean? That means if this gets violated, what legally can you do? What can you hire a lawyer to do? So Section A under Section 4. Any student who is deprived of an athletic opportunity or suffers any direct or indirect harm as a result of a violation of this section shall have a private cause of action for injunctive relief, damages, and other relief available under law against the school or public post-secondary institution. So what does that mean? If this is violated and you're a female athlete and you don't make a team because there's a transgender person on the team, or you lose to a transgender female on another team, or in some way this bill is violated and it affects you personally as the female athlete, you can file a lawsuit against that school. And what can you get? Injunctive relief is the first thing. What does injunctive relief mean? Injunctive relief is asking for someone to do something, not damages, which we see next, which is money. So pay me money. If I lost a scholarship and now you owe me money as the high school because I should have gotten that scholarship and I didn't because you violated this bill, pay me money, that's damages. That's in here as well. But when we talk about injunctive relief, that means kick the transgender female off the team, or remove the first place trophy from the transgender female and give it to me, remove the scholarship from the transgender female and give it to me, the woman, remove whatever it is that was a violation of this bill. You actually force them to make that change and do something. That's injunctive relief, as opposed to, and it's compared to, money damages. So there are some things, like if you're injured in a car accident and you lose your arm, you can't get injunctive relief because they can't put your arm back on, so all you can get is money damages. But in certain scenarios like this, you can get injunctive relief that can sometimes solve the problem. So that's what they're saying. You can get that injunctive relief. You can also get money damages and any other damages that the law allows. Okay, Section B. Any student who is subject to retaliation or other adverse action by a school, public post-secondary institution, or athletic association or organization as a result of reporting a violation of this section to an employee or representative of the school, institution, or athletic association or organization, or to any state and federal agency with oversight of schools or public post-secondary institutions in the state, shall have a private cause of action for injunctive relief, again, damages, and any other relief available under law against the school, institution, or athletic association or organization. So what does this mean? This means if you see a violation of this bill happening in a school or some other public organization, and you report it, and because you report it, they kick you out of the school. They kick you off the team. They don't allow you to play in this sports league anymore. They do some negative action towards you and retaliate against you for basically being a whistleblower for them violating this statute. You can file a lawsuit. You have a private cause of action against the institution or school that has retaliated against you for calling out a violation to this bill. These things are important because it gives the bill teeth. It's not just like, yeah, you can do this if you want, but if you don't, there's no really any consequences to you. They're saying there are going to be consequences, public schools and all these organizations that fall into these institutions. There are going to be consequences if you violate this bill. And that's important because consequences force you to obey, unless you're a 5-year-old kid. Section C. Any school or public post-secondary institution that suffers any direct or indirect harm as a result of a violation of this section shall have a private cause of action for injunctive relief, damages, and any other relief available under law against the governmental entity, licensing or accrediting organization, or athletic association or organization. So they're saying again, If you're a school and you're implementing this bill properly and some athletic organization or athletic group doesn't allow you to participate, you can't go to a tournament, your kids don't get scholarships to certain schools because you implemented this bill, you're not allowed to host events at your school, sporting events for women, because you are implementing this bill properly. If that's happening, you can report it. You can file a cause of action against whoever is retaliating against you for implementing this bill properly. D, all civil actions brought under this section must be initiated within 2 years after the alleged harm occurred. Persons or organizations who prevail on a claim brought under this section shall be entitled to monetary damages, including for any psychological, emotional, or physical harm suffered, reasonable attorney's fees and costs, and other appropriate relief. That may sound like a boring paragraph to you, but it's very important to me. Let me explain what this means. They're saying that there is a 2-year statute of limitations on harm done by violating this bill. If you lose a scholarship, if you lose a trophy, you lose accolades, you don't get to come to a tournament, your school is not allowed to host a tournament or get anybody to have scholarships from your school because you're implementing this bill. You have to make that determination and file a lawsuit within 2 years. We did a whole video on statute of limitations that you can look at to explain exactly what they are, how they can be broken, and why they are in place, right? But we just need to know from this paragraph there's a 2-year statute of limitations. It also clearly defines what damages you can collect for, right? So we've talked about scholarships, things like that. But you can, when we talked about money damages, that's money damages. Somebody's going to pay for your school. If you have to pay for it yourself now, that's money damages, right? So that's something that's included. But also psychological issues. If you lose your confidence because you keep losing to all the transgender females, if you quit a sport, or if you start taking drugs or go down a spiral because athletics used to be your outlet and now you have this big problem, you can collect for those damages if you can prove them. Emotional damages. Same thing. If you're emotionally scarred because of something that happens regarding this bill, you can sue for that and collect from that. And then the last one, which we haven't really talked about yet, physical damages. So with sports like soccer and hockey and field hockey and other sports that have a physical, water polo, that have a physical aspect to them, that are female sports, if there are transgender females that are bigger, faster, stronger, heavier, and they injure you by falling on you, tackling you, slide tackling you, whatever it may be, and you file a lawsuit against that school because they let the transgender female play not in accordance with this bill, and you have physical harm and medical bills and injuries and future pain and suffering, past pain and suffering, all the stuff that happens in a car accident case, you can sue for that if you are injured as a result from somebody not following this law. Very interesting. But the last line is the kicker. Reasonable attorney's fees and costs. What that means is if you file a lawsuit, you don't necessarily have to pay a lawyer up front. Your lawyer can collect fees from the school or the institution if you are the prevailing party. So if a lawyer files a lawsuit for you, has $50,000 in medical bills, and you win at the end, and they end up giving you that scholarship, or they end up giving you that trophy at the end, and that's all you get is the trophy or the gold medal or the accolades, well, they then have to pay your lawyer the $50,000 in attorney's fees for litigating this case because they violated this law, and this is a statutory requirement. So there are 2 kind of ways you can get attorney's fees and costs as a lawyer. You either file a proposal for settlement, you argue bad faith, and you go get it that way, saying this is so bad they need to pay our attorney's fees, or the easy way, which is statutory. If the statute of the law says if you win, you get attorney's fees, boom. That's what we call a statutory requirement, which is what this is. So one last idea that was thrown out to me that I don't know what you guys think about, but I just want to hear what you think, right? Because I like getting your opinion. I think it's a pretty good spread, a couple thousand people that hopefully will watch this, that subscribe to our channel, giving me their ideas, because these are the citizens. You guys are the people, you're living it. You've got kids in these schools, males, females, probably transgender male or females, and you can tell me kind of how you feel about this. Something that was thrown out to me is why not have male sports, female sports, and transgender sports? Then you'd be recognizing them as a people group. Nobody can argue about the fairness, physically of the competition or anything like that. And you'd be trying to please everyone, right? So some people have told me that, and there's been pushback on both sides. Some people like it. Some people think you're segregating it even more. It's even more discriminatory that you're only letting them compete against themselves and not against, the people born male, born female, whatever it may be. Let me know what you think about that as well. But what I really want to know from you guys in the comments, hopefully you like this video. Hopefully you like our content. If you do, please like the video and subscribe to our page so you don't miss us unpacking the actual facts of these things, as opposed to just spouting off what we think or trying to take the first news blurb or the first media outlet that screams that this is discrimination or screams that this is anti-women or anti-transgender or for women or for transgender, whatever it may be. Instead of grabbing onto those titles, let's unpack the facts. Hopefully you guys like that and you'll subscribe to our page for more of that. But what I really want to know is, what do you think about this bill? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's necessary? Or do you think it's discriminatory towards transgender people? That's what I want to know. Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for being with us as always, and we'll be with you next time. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.